circulated. Next, each of the applications will be considered separately. Planning staff will advise us the purpose and effect of the applications and provide any information that is relevant. The Secretary Treasurer will summarize any correspondence on file, and from there, the applicant may make a brief presentation if they so choose, and the public will have an opportunity to speak to the application being considered. After the public forum, the committee will then deliberate on the proposed applications and consider a motion to pass, defeat, or defer the decision for that application. The minor variance applications being considered this morning are A22-15 for 862 Haskett Drive, A23-06 for 13888 Georgian Bay Shore, A23-10 for 2 Island 3370, A23-45 for 14 Island 20 Severn River, A23-48 for 2 Island 1670, and finally A23-49 for 379 Rocky Shore Road. I would ask the members of the committee, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none. You have had an opportunity to review the minutes of our October 13, 2023 meeting. I'll read the resolution. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves the minutes of October 13, 2023 as circulated. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. The motion is carried. You've had a chance to review the agenda. I'll read the resolution. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment adopts the agenda dated November 17th, 2023. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. The motion is carried. Okay, to the Secretary Treasurer, please.
Notice of each of the applications was sent by first-class mail to the respective owners and assessed persons within 120 meters, 500 meters, or 800 meters, and to those persons and agencies likely to have an interest in the application. The notices were sent at least 20 days prior to this morning's meeting. Included in each notice was an explanation of the purpose and effect of the application and a key map showing the location of the property. Other relevant information may have also been provided. These circulations were provided in accordance with provisions of the Planning Act 1990.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee. This application of A22-15 has been before the committee twice before. I would like to share my screen if that's okay. As you stated, the property is 862 Haskett Drive, and the owners are Vincent and Jenny Santoro. The location is shown on the screen here with the subject property being noted. The application for a minor variance was received by the township. Sorry, my computer's acting up here. I apologize. Sorry. The application for the minor variance was received by the township in June 2022. Morgan Planning and Development submitted concerns on behalf of the owners of 856 Haskett Drive, which is the neighboring property, and requests that they wish the Committee of Adjustment to consider. In total, the application has been deferred twice in June and October of this year. Correspondence was received from MHBC Planning dated October 6, 2023, providing an updated site plan showing the proposed sleeping cabin has been pivoted to the north and will be closer to the existing dwelling. This will result in an additional variance being requested as the minimum setback between the dwelling and the sleeping cabin will not be met. The proposed development does include a sleeping cabin, which I've shown up here on the screen. It's right in this area here, if you can see my cursor. And as you can see, the hatched line was the original configuration of the building, and they've rotated it slightly. The interior side yard setback is proposed at 2 meters, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum of 5 meters. And the setback between the proposed sleeping cabin and existing dwelling is proposed at 1.5 meters, where the bylaw requires a minimum of 5 meters. Variances required are noted in this chart that is shown on the screen, where buildings or structures are located wholly or partially within 60 meters of the high water mark. The maximum lot coverage for those buildings and structures in the SR3 and SR6 zones shall be in accordance with table 6.2, which is in the zoning bylaw. And as you can see, I have laid out here the sections of the zoning bylaw, what the required percentage is in regards to lot coverage, what the required setback is, and what they are proposing. This is a site-specific zoning bylaw for 6 Mile Lake. When considering its application, the committee must consider the 4 tests as outlined in section 45(1) of the Ontario Planning Act. This section of the report will review the 4 tests in detail. Number 1 is to maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan. The subject property is designated waterfront and waterfront area in both the District of Muskoka official plan and the Township's official plan. The property is also within the 6 Mile Lake inland waterfront community boundary. Planning staff are of the opinion that the proposed minor variance requests do conform to the applicable policies of both the District of Muskoka official plan and the Township official plan. Number 2 is to maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. The subject property is zoned 6 Mile Lake residential or SR6 in the zoning bylaw. This zone permits detached dwellings and accessory structures. Based on what has been proposed and what has been presented from the applicant, staff are of the opinion that the proposed minor variance requests maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. Number 3 is to be desirable for the appropriate development or use of the land, building, or structure. This test does refer to the appropriateness of a development given the existing conditions of a property and if it is in keeping with the interest of the community and general public. As you can note on the photo on the screen, the subject property is higher in elevation than the neighboring parcel, which may take away from the privacy enjoyment of the neighboring parcel if the sleeping cabin is located in the preferred location. However, staff do not believe that the establishment of a sleeping cabin, which is not the principal or main dwelling, will have an effect on privacy of the neighboring waterfront area. There appears to be many similar situations on this street and waterfront area. There's also a stream buffer that's to be incorporated into the proposal. Therefore, staff are of the opinion that the proposed minor variance is appropriate and is in keeping with the general interest of the community and general public. And the final test is that it be minor in nature, and this test refers to the overall development proposal, and if it is considered minor in nature. This test is not merely to be a numerical determination, and minor can be evaluated through the determination of whether the proposed development would have a minor impact on the environment, the enjoyment and use of neighboring properties, or impacts on the functioning of government or other utility essential services. Conclusion based on this, after doing research through the legislation that would be applicable to this application, including a review of the provincial policy statement, the District of Muskoka official plan, the Township of Georgian Bay official plan, and the Township of Georgian Bay zoning bylaw, it is staff's opinion that the proposed minor variance application is consistent and in conformity with the relevant policies and provisions provided.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, is there correspondence with this application?
3 letters of support were received from Robert and Suzanne Smith, Susan and Doug Stokes, and Heather Linka. 2 letters of no objection were received from Richard Skur and David and Beryl Rasmussen. 2 letters of objection were received from CJ Hutter and Morgan Planning on behalf of the Stewarts.
I notice here for the benefit of those that we have a number of people and I just love to remind everybody at this point that this application is for the time now. Committee members are very well versed with the content of this. Read the presentation, reviewed the presentation, read the correspondence, and the letters that were submitted. So I would respectfully ask that we don't go through the entire presentations that we had in the past. And to keep your comments brief. And in an ideal situation, that if you are making new, with that, I would ask, is the applicant present and do they wish to address
For you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Santoro is online also, and he has his hand up to speak.
Okay, then we will begin with Mr. Santoro. Please proceed. Mr. Santoro, your microphone is not coming through here.
I'm sorry, can everyone hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I apologize for that. And okay, and I'm sorry I didn't also catch Chair Hill's opening comments, but I will proceed anyway.
Well, let me briefly ask you to be brief.
Yes, okay. Chair Hill and members of the Committee of Adjustment, thank you for allowing me a few minutes of your time. My planner, Jamie Robinson, will identify why this proposed structure meets the 4 tests in Section 45(1) of the Ontario Planning Act. I would like to direct your attention to another important issue. Over the past 14 months, my planner and 5 professional planners, all representing the township, have identified all 3 of my proposals submitted meet the 4 tests in Section 45(1) of the Ontario Planning Act and have recommended approval. The one exception has been Ms. Lemieux, who has concluded none of my proposals have met any of the 4 tests. Her primary reasoning is the proposed structure will reduce her client's privacy, which in turn, she states, will negatively impact her client's enjoyment and their property value. My takeaway is the requirements outlined in the Ontario Planning Act are likely not the issue holding up approval of this application. I would like to share a concern I have. I feel the committee has not always been provided complete, clear, and accurate information regarding or required to make an informed decision. In the last presentation of objection, the position regarding lack of privacy was supported with pictures. I would like members to recognize each picture, without exception, was taken in early spring when deciduous trees have no leaves and when outdoor activity areas are not generally used. I feel pictures taken out of season are inappropriate as they do not provide full, clear, and accurate information regarding privacy. I respectfully request you take this into consideration during presentations of objection today and during your deliberations. Mr. Robinson will be providing pictures when there is foliage on the trees. I would also like members to recognize previous presentations of objection have not included any pictures from my neighbors' outdoor activity areas, not the outdoor dining area, their fire pit, their decks, nor the dock facility, as proof to support the position my neighbor's privacy will be significantly compromised in these areas. In simple terms, I am asking for no more than what my neighbor has, a comparable sleeping cabin within 60 meters of the shoreline. Our lot coverage within 60 meters are similar. In my case, I'm requesting a side yard setback. In their case, their existing sleep cabin is built over 5 meters onto the 20-meter shore allowance. I'm not challenging this. I am only saying this is the situation. The proposal being presented today is an attempt to work collaboratively with this committee. At the September 2023 committee meeting, Member Rivet suggested I rotate the proposed sleep cabin more to the north. It is what I have done. This has increased my cost. However, it will be providing additional privacy for both my neighbor and myself. It will also provide more area between our common lot line and the proposed sleep cabin, facilitating the potential for more vegetation for screening and privacy. I feel this rotation and a host of other concessions I have previously agreed to, including lowering the proposed sleep cabin elevation by 2 meters and reducing its area by 18% from the original proposal, having no window treatment or lighting towards my neighbor, and the provision of native plantings recommended by a professional landscape architect. These demonstrate that I have made a reasonable effort to find compromise. I respectfully request you consider these efforts and approve this variance. Thank you.
Thank you, Santoro, and I appreciate your comments and the brevity of your remarks. I would now ask if we have a speaker here. Could you identify yourself, please? And we know who you are. I would ask that hopefully your presentation is not a repeat of what we heard from Mr. Santoro, and if we could keep it in the same time frame, it'd be appreciated. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And my name is Jamie Robinson. I'm a partner with MHBC Planning and a registered professional planner. I will try to be as brief as possible. I've been very brief in the or myself and my staff have been very brief the last few times we've been here. I think the opposition has been less brief, so I want to make sure I cover the salient points here in a detailed manner so that you've got correct and accurate information. I will just share my screen. So I'm just familiarizing myself with this new integrated system here of Zoom and in person. So I'll share my screen. All right, so Mr. Chairman and committee members, a couple key points that I'd like to make and just draw your attention to. Mr. Santoro touched on one of them, and so did Ms. McCabe, is that the real reason we're here in the deferral last time was the committee asked us to look at, is there a way to have some compromise and potentially increase the setback to potentially provide additional privacy and opportunity for more landscaping, as indicated by both Ms. McCabe and Mr. Santoro. That has been done. The cabin has been rotated. Although a 2-meter setback proposed from the interior side lot line, that would apply to the back corner of the sleeping cabin, and I'll show you that in a moment. The front corner of the sleeping cabin's been rotated so that there's 3 meters of setback there. I've got a few additional photos and a brief video I can run for you if you want to, for those that haven't been to the site, so they can get a feel for the vegetation that exists there and the opportunities for screening it and the situation. Ms. McCabe made one point that was, I felt, very important that I just wanted to reiterate, and that was that in staff's opinion that there is no impact on the neighboring amenity areas as a result of this proposed sleeping cabin. The one photo that you saw historically from Ms. Lemieux from their property was taken from the bathroom window from the cabin. There's no photos that exist from any amenity areas on the property, and as Mr. Santoro stated, I think that's obvious why that's the case, is because there is no impact on the amenity areas as a result of this proposed sleeping cabin. Again, a specific application at this location, Mr. Whitliv, Mr. McCabe, and Mr. Smith and myself are all registered or are all professional planners and have indicated that the 4 tests are met. And those are the 4 tests that you as a committee must have consideration of when you make a decision. I think you did the right thing last meeting in deferring it to try to come to a compromise. I know that's always important from a neighborly perspective to try to have neighbors work together. And so I do think you did the right thing in deferring it. But we've tried our best to work with the neighbor. It doesn't appear to be an ability to come to an agreement. So unfortunately, the committee has to make a decision, and I think that decision needs to be made today. Just in terms of that proposal, just to elaborate on the screen, you can see a 2-meter on the left-hand side is a survey of the general area within 60 meters of the property of the shoreline, which shows the existing development. And on the right-hand side, that's a blow-up of the area of the sleeping cabin. You can see at the back corner, it's about 2 meters. At the front corner where it's been rotated in this area, it's been increased to 3 meters. That provides that additional area for planting. I don't know, have you all been to the site, or would it be helpful if I showed, if you've been to the site, if I showed a brief video just to show the vegetation characteristics?
I think we've all
Been there? Okay, I'll skip that then. Just in terms of the view from the lake, this is an excerpt from that. The sleeping cabin is effectively located in the center of the property. There will be no impact on the view from the lake. Why that's important is because that's really what the intent of the official plan and that test speaks towards, is maintaining the natural character of the shoreline environment. This proposed sleeping cabin within 60 meters or within the interior side yard setback and exceeds the maximum permitted lot coverage within 60 meters would be fully meet the intent of the official plan. Again, this is a zoom in. This is a photo, a view from the canoe, if you will, which we often speak towards. This is looking directly at the area where the sleeping cabin will be located. It's not visible from the lake. The 4 tests. So I've touched on the official plan test. The intent of the zoning bylaw test is really what I believe is typically one of the most important tests in these considerations. So I'll speak to that briefly. So firstly, there's the intent of the zoning bylaw as it relates to the interior side yard setback requirement is to make sure there's appropriate spacing between buildings and an opportunity for buffering as the case may be. It's my opinion, as well as the other planners and staff, that there is appropriate separation between buildings on properties, and that there is an opportunity for additional buffering or screening in addition to what's there. As in respect of the coverage additional allowances that are requested, the intent of that coverage maximum within 60 meters of the high water mark. The purpose of that is to ensure there's an appropriate balance between lot coverage within 60 meters and built form within 60 meters or structures. And as I previously indicated and demonstrated and provided evidence on, the photographs make it clear that when viewed from the water, this proposed structure has no impact on that view. So it has no sort of discernible impact on that lot coverage piece. Although the number goes up, there's no optic or impact associated with that. As it relates to another variance that's been added in this instance, which we identified was the need for a variance for the setback between structures on the property. So the setback between the dwelling.
Sorry, if I could interrupt you. This sort of information has already been provided to us, the understanding of the reason for the setback and the lot coverage and so on by our own planning department. So as I mentioned before, we're almost 7 minutes into this. Is there any new information from our last presentations that you wish to introduce, or?
So I can just skip ahead. I'll forego the 4 tests, and if you'd like. There's one slide, a couple slides I'd just like to bring your attention to that illustrate the previous point that was made with respect to the amenity areas on the site. This slide does circle in red the location of the amenity areas. It shows that the star is the location where the proposed sleeping cabin is. And I'd just like to, what this illustrates and provides evidence to the committee on is the fact that the orientation of activity areas on the neighboring property is not in the direction of the sleeping cabin or the Santoro property at all, and are not visible from that location. The other point I wanted to make was that in terms of lot coverage, the lot coverage that's being sought here is very similar to what exists on other properties, including the neighboring property next door that's been opposing the proposal. So with that, Mr. Chairman and committee members, I thank you for the opportunity to provide comments today. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those. If there's any new information that comes up from the delegations or deputations that are made today, I would respectfully request that we have the opportunity to respond to those as the applicant that's made this request. So with that, thank you very much for your indulgence, and appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. I see that there's another name from MHBC on this registration list, Mr. Graham Richards. Is that is he expected to speak here as well?
No, sir. He's one of my colleagues that's been working on this application with me, but he is not speaking today.
Okay. I noticed that we also have Victoria Lemieux from Morgan Planning has requested to speak to this application. Is Ms. Lemieux on Zoom? Very well. Good morning, Ms. Lemieux. Please proceed with your comments. But as I mentioned earlier, I would really appreciate if we're not reliving previous presentations and that you keep your comments to the point and as brief as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Absolutely. Again, good morning, Chair, committee members, the applicant and their agent and members of the public. Just to reiterate for the record, my name is Victoria Lemieux. I'm a registered professional planner from Morgan Planning and Development, and our address for the record is 98 Tecumseth Street, Orillia, Ontario, L3V1Y2. Committee, again, my comments will be brief. To reiterate again for the record, I am speaking this morning on behalf of the neighboring property owners located at 856 Haskett Drive. As you know, committee, we did submit an updated letter of objection, which I'm confident you have all had the chance to review. So in addition to that letter, I do have some final comments that I wish to provide. Firstly, just as a brief response to the applicant and their agents' comments, and thank you for those. I just wanted to reiterate that in addition to some questions around the time of year that photos were used in previous correspondence, as we all know, there's many seasons in the year, and absolutely some photos provide more foliage than others, but we also want to reiterate that some photos that also have been used from a drone perspective also don't provide the full breadth of the impact of this development, but I will continue with my final comments. Thank you. So firstly, wanted to thank the committee for your time and efforts in the previous meeting back in September to, again, as the applicant's agent also agreed to encourage the applicant to consider an alternative location for the proposed sleeping cabin in an effort to minimize the impact to our client regarding privacy, visual impact, and of course, the overall impact on peace and enjoyment of their home. In reviewing the revised submission by the applicant, I wish to verbally reiterate from our submitted letter of objection that this is simply a small rotation in the building location, which will not provide any relief to the previous mentioned concerns. It was mentioned by the applicant that our suggestion to consider a revised building location to the rear of the property simply is not possible. Though I do believe and have seen on multiple occasions that most of anything is possible these days when it comes to construction, but if in fact that location is not feasible, then the request to build a sleeping cabin should be denied for the ongoing issues and concerns raised by neighboring property owners throughout this process. The proposed location requires relief from both the setback to the existing dwelling, as well as the side yard setback, in addition to lot coverage. Committee, these are not minor reductions in these setbacks. They represent a 70% and 60% reduction from what is required. In addition, it is my understanding that more trees are intended to be removed in order to allow for this construction, which should provide further concern to the committee from a visual impact perspective from the lake and ground view from the canoe. The concerns with the proposed location and the further impact it would have to our client's property due to the topography should provide concern to the committee from a drainage and environmental perspective. The area is frankly sheer rock, as you've seen from both our photos provided and the applicant. Additional plantings as proposed, without a mechanism in place such as site plan control, would not be able to be monitored by both the neighbor or the township to ensure that they are maintained and replaced if and when they fail, which is likely. Further, the drainage impact that this structure may cause to our client's property in the lake has not yet been reviewed by a qualified engineer other than the applicant to ensure that there would be no long-term impacts to their property or to the lake. Throughout previous submissions and with my additional comments this morning, I wish to reiterate that this application, in my opinion, does not meet the 4 tests of the Planning Act. It does not conform with the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw. It is not desirable development for the land due to the grave impact to adjacent properties, and should not be considered minor. We respectfully request that the committee listen to the valid concerns of those most impacted by this proposal and deny this application. Thank you very much for your time, committee.
Thank you, Ms. Lemieux. Those were the people who are registered to speak. Are there any members of the public, either online or present, that wish to make comment on this application? Okay, seeing none, I will bring the application before the committee for any questions or concerns. And I would just point out that in terms of the application, what we're looking at here are a minor variance for an increase in lot coverage, an increase of lot coverage within 60 meters of high water mark. We're looking for a reduction in the side yard setback, and we're looking for a reduction in the building separation. So those are the 4 items, and I would ask if there are any questions or comments about those 4 items. And if so, this would be an opportune time to do that. And I see a hand from Member Jarvis. Please proceed.
My first question is Rob from property of the buffer zone in season.
Yeah, I can provide you with, do you want to see it?
Yes, that'd be great.
I have 2 versions. There's so there's
Just for member Rivette's benefit, I've requested pictures of the buffer zone in season.
so maybe this, let me just make this a little larger for you. So what this, if I can just kind of tell you what, explain what this is showing, might be helpful.
Yeah, actually, it's pretty clear. Yeah. Or isn't, as the case may be, which is my point. Having been on that site, I'm a little concerned. I know we have setbacks in place from neighbors for a reason, and part of that reason is privacy and in many different ways. And so that is my primary concern right off the bat. I have a question for our planner. Yeah, I was looking at the elevation photos provided by the planning department. There's a deck. Is that deck, where is that deck in relation to the neighbor's property?
Jamie, could you stop sharing your screen for a sec so I can? Thank you. Sorry, I just got to pull up my. It was on the survey, you said?
It's in the planning report you provided to us.
Yep.
Chair, I'll have a piggyback question on this too.
Is it the sketch that was provided by MHBC?
Is it in there?
Page 11.
I thought that was part of your report. Wasn't from MHBC either, I don't think. Yeah. No, it's the actual schematic of the
Oh, I've got that right here.
yeah. Yeah.
No,
Nope. It's one showing the actual drawings for the cabin. Design drawings for the cabin.
Just trying to find it. This one? Is it the house, like the actual description of the?
No, it's the actual drawings of the cabin. Page 11 of 25 in the development services report. There we go.
Is that the one you're referring to?
Yeah,
Okay.
so in the elevations that show a deck, that'd be elevations A, B, and D. Can you tell me where the deck is in relation to the neighbor's yard, to the buffer area?
The deck is on the front, which is not facing the,
That is the front, okay.
yeah,
And the entrance then would be facing the actual cottage?
that's correct.
That helps me significantly. So
Yeah.
those two windows in elevation C would be facing towards the back of the property.
Elevation C is a side view of the building, not the back. The rear is elevation B.
Yeah, and that rear is facing the buffer zone, right? The
Correct.
neighbors.
That's
So
my
no windows
understanding.
on
Am I
that side.
correct,
Okay,
Jamie?
that-
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And then I have one last question, which is with regards to comments from Victoria Lemieux about the area at the back of the property. I know we had an issue with that early on because of a hydro corridor being in the way, and apparently that's not the case. Have I got that fact incorrect, or is there the possibility that there is now land available back there based on information provided by Victoria Lemieux?
May I present a point of clarification only?
Well, in fact, yes, it is. I'm just, yes. Because it was commented in the report in the letter from Victoria Lemieux that there is indeed available land at the back of the property.
I can answer this.
And I might just interject that the applicant is not seeking a minor variance to locate to the bunkie to the
Okay.
rear of the property.
was looking it
We're
up.
dealing with it where it is right now, so it's really not,
Okay, then I'm done with my questions.
okay.
Appreciate your
And,
clarification, Chair.
Member Predko, I believe you had a question on the same subject?
Excuse me, and through you, Chair, yes, I did, but it was really around the orientation of the bunkie and to confirm that the entrance to the bunkie as proposed is next to the cottage and it isn't at the back of the property. So that there's no windows or ingress or egress
No.
at the side. Just the deck would project towards the water, but if somebody looked to the right, you'd be able to see
That's correct.
that property.
Yeah.
And then was there ever any discussion of screening on that deck to help provide privacy, or is that
Not
a
for the desk,
consideration?
through you, Mr. Chair, not for the deck itself. However, the applicant, as a condition, I have requested that the committee consider that a landscaping plan be prepared by an landscape architect, not just done by the applicant. So that's something that could be considered at the same time.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Hill, may I provide some clarification on that?
Not at this time, thanks.
Okay.
Member, or Ms. McCabe, just on that landscape design, is that something that needs to be approved by the planning department or the building department, or?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it would be approved by the planning department. And if we felt it necessary, we would get it peer reviewed by a landscape architect of our choice to see if it would be substantial enough to accommodate what we're trying to achieve.
Okay, the point of that being that there's plenty of provision in there to make sure that the screening meets.
That's correct.
The intended requirement, okay. Are there any other questions or comments regarding this application? Member Matthews?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I guess through you to Ms. McCabe, the reorientation of the bunkie, twisting a little bit closer to the existing cottage, that now has come up as part of the new request for a variance.
That's correct. We are now requesting a
This is
reduction,
not already at the back already.
but
closer.
because, yes, but because we're turning it now, the front is going to be like that one corner is going to be even closer.
Will it be closer than the back?
Am I correct on that, Jamie?
I don't think so.
Want me to speak to that? So,
Be happy with
yeah, I can answer it. So through Mr. Chairman, so that's a variance that wasn't identified previously, and then when we were reviewing it in detail and got into this rotation, we identified that that's a variance that should be sought.
Okay.
There was question why it may not have been caught earlier was whether or not we felt that an abundance of caution, we should consider that variance now. When we took it to the support post, because there's an overhang there, it meets as opposed to where it it's set back from the dwelling itself or the dwelling wall. So that may have been why, but out of abundance of caution, that's why.
Just when I looked at the drawing, it looked like the rear of the
Exactly.
bunkie was actually still closer to the existing than
Right.
even with the twisted front.
You're correct. You are correct.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Anything further?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Mr. Schmidt, Member Schmidt?
Thank you, and this is, I can honestly say this is one of these ones that has actually cost me some sleep, believe it or not. Because I have always respected, the Santoro's maintenance and care of that property. I think they've been great ambassadors of the lake. The struggle that I'm having, and I said it at the last meeting, and we did have a building official here that saw no reason that this sleeping cabin couldn't have been moved closer to the existing dwelling, which I think in this case would even be better for the Santoros because of the overhang to transition between the two properties. And I certainly would feel more comfortable with the minor variance toward the existing dwelling instead of a 70% decrease for the protection of a neighbor. I'm not one for protecting views. If you want to have a view, you buy it. That's always been my stance when it comes to that stuff. But one of the pillars of a minor variance is the enjoyment of neighboring properties. And although we have letters of no objection and letters of support from people from the Broad Lake community, I think no objection carries as much weight as a direct affected neighbor. So I respect that there's been a twist of a little bit. There certainly seems to me like there's more room to grant peace between two properties. And I don't really know of any other spot as I've traveled our lake where I see this type of proximity to a neighboring property. One of the joys of 6 Mile Lake is we have an expanse of properties, and very seldom do we have ones that are within 2 meters that close. But I'm sure there's some exceptions to every rule, but again, loads of respect to the Santoro family, great ambassadors of the lake. I struggle with the impact that's being imposed onto that neighbor. That's my comment.
Okay, and I would just reiterate, as you mentioned at the beginning, that, you know, the view from any of the properties is not part of our mandate for the Committee of Adjustment. We're looking at those 4 elements that I talked about and the 4 tests that we have to run for that. So are there any other questions, concerns, any comments that one membership needs to make before that? All right. Oh, Member Rivette. Does she have her hand up? I don't see that. Okay.
Yes.
Member Rivet, please proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Just a comment. I just want to circle back to something that the applicant said. I don't recall that I suggested the building be rotated. I believe I suggested the building be moved closer to the main dwelling so that the encroachment was on the applicant's property, not to the neighbor's property. It was, I don't believe, just a rotation. For me, it's not about the view is not an issue on this. The issue for me is, as to reiterate what Member Schmidt said, is we have complaints from 2 adjoining neighbors, and that's very concerning. The other thing is there is a lot of, it is overbuilding within the 60 meters. And if there is space in the rear of the property, I'm not sure why it can't be there. I don't understand what the issue is to putting it where it can meet the setbacks. My concern on this is now we have 2 complaints from the neighbors. And again, it is not just the view from the canoe in this instance, because there are side yard setbacks for that very reason. So I'm struggling with that as well.
It's going to be 3-3.
Okay, anything further, Ms. Rivet?
No, thank you.
Okay, just so we're clear here, the application is
Ask them what happened.
for approval to build this structure next to the existing cottage. It's it's not within the purview of the Committee of Adjustment to prescribe other locations. So any other questions or comments from committee members? And seeing none, I will read the resolution.
Oh, it's okay. If it's against, I know. Ask
Some-
them.
I think we have member Santoro speaking in the background. It is moved by member Matthews, seconded by member Rivet. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves minor variance application A22-15 as amended for 862 Haskett's Drive to facilitate the construction of a sleeping cabin by permitting a lot coverage of 13.5% within 60 meters of the high water mark, a total lot coverage of 17.7%, a reduction in the interior side yard setback of 2 meters to the proposed building, and a reduction in the minimum setback required between the principal dwelling and the sleeping cabin of 1.5 meters on the subject property. The above noted approvals are subject to the following conditions. 1, that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property which is subject to this decision. 2, that this decision applies only to the proposed building as indicated in Schedule A attached to and forming part of this decision. Any other variances that may appear on the schedules are not listed in the written decision and are not authorized. 3, that the owner provide a landscape plan prepared by a landscape architect to the satisfaction of the township, identifying the size and location of all vegetative screening area satisfactory to the, along the interior side lot line, and the species of plants, trees that are to be planted. The landscape plantings will be completed and installed prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit for the proposed building. 4, that the owner prepare and submit prior to the issuance of a building permit an erosion and sediment control plan to the sole satisfaction and approval of the township, and that said approval plan be installed and maintained throughout the duration of any construction on the property. 5, that an occupancy permit for the proposed building not be issued by the township until such time as the tent structure and miscellaneous building material stored on the property is removed. And 6, that this decision expires 3 years from the date of the decision if building permits have not been issued for this development. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. And Louise, can you see her?
Louise, please raise your hand if you are voting for it, or just state what you're, she didn't raise her hand. So it doesn't care.
I'm sorry?
She didn't raise her hand.
Okay. Okay, so we have a split decision.
Member Rivet, can you please just verbalize your vote?
I'm not in favor of the application.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a split decision on that. There's 3 in favor and 3. So 1, 2, 3. Pardon me? Oh, of course. Yes, of course. Okay. Very well. Then based on that, the application is denied. Thank you.
Could you explain why it's based on that? For clarification?
You'll need to speak with the planning department, Mr. Santoro, following the session. The matter is resolved at this point.
Mr. Santoro, you will be issued a notice of decision following the meeting, which will outline the committee's justification.
If you may, Mr. Chair, if it was a tied vote 3-3, you're the deciding vote.
He voted.
In favor.
It was 3.
Yeah, but what,
No, 3, 2,
yeah, but
3,
what
6. Yeah, so it,
what Ms. McCabe is saying, if it's a tie, the vote
Chair is
of
the deciding
chair
vote.
is the deciding one.
no, he didn't vote. That would be if the chair wasn't voting. Yeah, if it's a split vote, it's not carried. We'll
Well,
discuss it after.
we will discuss it after, so just, we'll get back to you on that, Mr. Santoro, just to make sure that it's, that we're clear. But as it stands right now, we have a tied vote.
Let's clarify.
Let's not try and resolve that at this point. We will, we'll take that offline and we'll come back. It's not often that we find ourselves in a situation like that, so, okay. Our next application is minor variance A 23-06 for 13888 Georgian Bay Shore. To the planner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With your permission, I'll share my screen. Mr. Chairman, committee members, those in attendance online and here in person, my name is Jeff Kratke and I am a registered professional planner employed full-time by the Township of Georgian Bay. The agent for application A 2306 regarding subject lands at 13888 Georgian Bay Shore is Flow Drawings and Design, and Victoria Hoffman is here. She represents that firm. The purpose of the application is under subsection 45(2) of the Planning Act is to vary the township's zoning bylaw as amended so that, notwithstanding subsection 411E2(4), the new porch may further encroach into the front yard. Table 4.3 in subsection 4.20A regarding the maximum projection for a screened porch of 1.2 meters above finished grade is increased from 2 meters to 5.01 meters. The setback from water bodies and water courses in subsection 4.41 of the zoning bylaw is reduced from 20 meters to 11.82 meters. And the minimum required front yard in table 6.2 of subsection 6.3 of the zoning bylaw is also reduced from 20 meters to 11.82 meters. The effect of the application allows construction of a new screen porch addition in front of the existing legal non-complying shoreline dwelling. The key map shows that the subject lands are located just north of Honey Harbor on a part of Georgian Bay near Bosley Island. The subject property is shown in a site sketch prepared by surveyor, as are statistics regarding that property that are included in my report. The proposed development, the existing floor plan is shown on the left-hand slide or left-hand side of the slide, and the proposed expansion in the green hatching on the right-hand side. And that continues on these slides that follow that give the committee an understanding of how this will look from the front, from the sides, and from a three-dimensional perspective. At the request of myself, the applicant's agent prepared and submitted an erosion and sediment control plan, or ESCP, that is intended to protect fish habitat during construction. The ESCP includes written and map parts. The map component is on your screen. And a key component of this ESCP is its use of silt fencing in the blue hatching. to surround the proposed screen porch expansion plus the area for construction works on the subject lands. The agent rationale was included in my report, and I'm not going to read it verbatim, but essentially they're trying to work with the existing building structure with the septic system location and other constraints on the site. And they have noted that they submitted the ESCP. The provincial policy statement and the District of Muskoka official plan both speak to policies regarding hazardous lands. There is unfortunately no mapping from the district as of yet regarding the hazardous lands on Georgian Bay in this part of Georgian Bay. However, I will express my professional opinion that given the extreme inland location of this particular part of Georgian Bay, it is incredibly unlikely that there is more than a flood issue at play here. And so in my opinion, the hazard land policies under the PPS are not at issue. Also, the mapping that's in the district's official plan regarding wildfire issues show that the subject lands do not have any of those concerns. The Township of Georgian Bay official plan does show the subject lands within the waterfront area and the upper parts of Georgian Bay as being a type 2 fish habitat. The adjacent lands are similarly designated, except for to the north, there is a type 1 fish habitat, but it is outside of the area of expected concern. And so again, this ESCP was left to the condition of the committee and to the applicant to prepare. The Georgian Bay Township zoning bylaw includes the subject lands under the SR1 zone, and the adjacent lands are under the SR1 and SR5 zone, as well as the type 1 fish habitat to the north. The ESCP, as I've mentioned previously, is intended to protect fish habitat during construction. Its written component requires that the applicants contact us if there is any issue arising during the construction, either as a result of the construction or certainly should there be a storm that causes damage to the silt fencing, and the applicant is expected to repair. The Google satellite image demonstrates that the setbacks nearby are often less than the subject property. And so I want the committee to consider that. No comments were received from either the public or agencies. My analysis and option is that the application is consistent with the PPS given the ESCP that protects fish habitat. Subject to the recommended conditions, the application proposes development passing the tests under the Planning Act for this legal non-conforming shoreline dwelling being desirable for the appropriate development and not resulting in undue adverse impacts on the adjacent lands. The committee does have options, certainly, but I recommend the committee approve the subject application with the recommended conditions. And the resolution that is recommended is be it resolved that the Committee of Adjustment for the Township of Georgian Bay approves the application subject to the following conditions regarding the subject lands under subsection 45(2) of the Planning Act, thereby varying the zoning bylaw so that, notwithstanding subsection 4.11(e)(2)(4), the new porch may further encroach into the front yard. Table 4.3 in subsection 4.20a regarding the maximum projection for the screen porch is more than 1.2 meters above finished grade is increased from 2 meters to 5.01 meters. The setback from water bodies and water courses in subsection 4.41 of the zoning bylaw is reduced from 20 meters to 11.82 meters. And the minimum required front yard in table 6.2 of subsection 6.3 of the zoning bylaw is also reduced from 20 meters to 11.82 meters. The conditions of approval are that the owners provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from the Township Financial Service indicating that all property taxes are paid and up to date regarding the subject lands, and that this decision applies to the proposed development of the subject lands as shown on attachments 1 to 3B of the Development Services Report regarding this application, only when a building permit is granted within 3 years from the date of the decision. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No written correspondence was received.
Through your chair, my name is Victoria Hoffman. Here on behalf of Flow Drawings and Design. Our address is 3 Violet Drive, Port Severn. Sydney, the owners are online, but I'm here to kind of answer.
I've just promoted them over, so they'll be joining shortly.
Jeff did a great job with the presentation, and to the whole planning staff, I really like the new presentations as well. Kind of gets more of the point across. I think this one's a little bit straightforward. It was the obvious location for the porch. You know, anything else would kind of be pretty intrusive to the building design. And we also had some site considerations. But if you guys have any questions with regards to like the structure or anything like that, let me know.
Thank you. I see the applicants there. Does the applicant wish to speak as well, or we, okay, thank you. If there are no further questions, is there anyone from the public that wishes to address this application? Okay, no one online. Seeing none, I will close the public session and bring the application before the committee for any questions or concerns. And do we have any member Predco?
Thank you. It should be a very brief question. I think in the report we have from Mr. Cracky, it just indicates that the variance is to do with more than 1.2 meters above the finished grade on a deck that projects 2 to 5 from 2 to 5 meters. Is that a building code issue, or is that in the zoning bylaw? I'm just trying to understand where this particular issue comes from. Is it
Through the chairman, that's our zoning bylaw. This is not being tested against the building code at this time.
okay? Thank you. That's all.
Okay. Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, I guess, a comment to the applicant and to Ms. Hoffman. Thank you for drawings. It's always a lot easier, at least from my perspective, to help make a decision when we get a full perspective of what it is you're trying to do. When the first notice comes out and we were on site, we did a site visit with them. Okay, well, it's coming out. Not quite sure how this is all going to work.
Right.
But once we saw the full drawing, it made it a lot easier. So,
You're welcome.
and also congratulations to the applicant for trying to get into. I don't think you need to worry about flooding. I'd be more worried about if the water goes down anymore. It was a bit of a challenge to get in there in a 23-foot boat, so but we made it. That's just my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I will read the resolution. Moved by member Jarvis, seconded by member Predco. Be it resolved that the Committee of Adjustment for the Township of Georgian Bay approves the A23-06 application subject to the following conditions regarding the subject lands municipally known as 13888 Georgian Bay Shore. Under subsection 45-2 of the Planning Act, hereby varying zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended, so that 1, notwithstanding subsection 4, sub 11E 2-4, the new porch may further encroach into the front yard. 2, table 4.3 of subsection 4.2 regarding the maximum projection of a screen porch more than 1.2 meters above finished grade is increased from 2 meters to 5.01 meters. 3, the setback from water bodies and water courses in subsection 4.41 of the zoning bylaw is reduced from 20 meters to 11.82 meters. and that the minimum required front yard in table 6.2 of subsection 6.3 of the zoning bylaw is also reduced from 20 meters to 11.82 meters. And subject to the following conditions. One, that the owners provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes are paid up to date regarding the subject lands, and that this decision applies to the proposed development of subject lands shown on attachments 1 to 3B of the Development Services Report regarding A23-06 application only when a building permit is granted within 3 years from the date of decision. Please note that the agent may act on the owners to satisfy conditions except where execution agreements or documents is required. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried and the application is approved. At this time, I'd like to take a very short break. We will recess for 10 minutes, and following that, we will move to our next application, which is A23-10 for 2 Island 3370. So we'll reconvene at 11:15. Thank you. Very well. It is now 11:15 and we are ready to reconvene as soon as we have our Secretary Treasurer back. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very well. Okay. Our Secretary Treasurer is back. And I'd like to call the meeting back to order. Our next application is minor variance A23-10 for 2 Island 3370. And I'd like to reiterate, as we did earlier, that this application was previously deferred. It's coming back to committee. We have had the benefit of presentations from all parties in the past, and I would respectfully ask that in order to move forward, not that any presentations that you want to make are not a repeat of what we have had already. We've seen the presentations. We have looked at the submissions and read the correspondence and are quite familiar with that. But if there is new information that we ought to have, then we're most definitely this would be the opportunity to do that. So having said that, I would ask our planner to proceed with this application.
Through the chair. This application was brought before the Committee of Adjustment on September 15th for a public hearing. The applicant acknowledged comments at the hearing and has since revised their application. Notice reflecting the revisions to the application was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act and the township's policies to allow for a second public hearing today. Despite the revisions, the purpose of the application remains same: to facilitate the development of a dock, dryland boathouse, shed, and sleeping cabin on the island, which will be accessory to the future detached dwelling. To be clear, the detached dwelling does not form part of this application, despite drawings of such being included in the application. The subject property is an unsubdivided island located in Georgian Bay with an area of 3.1 hectares and approximate lot frontage of 260 meters that is made up of granite rock and is heavily treed. The applicant has begun construction on the shed, dryland boathouse, and dock. Staff would like to make note that the Ontario Land Tribunal does not factor into their decision whether the proposal has already been built when considering cases where minor variances are requested to legalize after the fact an already built structure that does not comply with zoning regulations. The Committee of Adjustment should take the same approach, and the committee must consider each application on its merits based on evidence and according to the 4 statutory tests, being whether the variance is minor, is desirable for the appropriate development or use of land, building, or structure, and whether the general intent and purpose of the official plans and the bylaw are maintained. The Planning Act does not set out a 5th test as to whether an owner has contravened municipal regulations relating to construction. It is the township's role to address construction-related concerns and to review plans, implement any conditions of approval, issue a building permit, inspect building sites, enforce its own bylaws, and impose any appropriate penalties. As an independent tribunal, the Committee of Adjustment has no jurisdiction over such matters.
The applicant has reduced the number of requested variances from 7 to 6 by revising the dock area to comply with the maximum permitted in the zoning bylaw. Through this application, the applicant is seeking relief for the following. A dryland boathouse having a width of 6.7 meters, whereas section 4112-4A of the zoning bylaw permits a maximum width of 6 meters. A dock having a maximum width of 5.63 meters at its widest point, whereas section 4113-2N permits a maximum width of 3.1 meters. 3. A maximum permitted cumulative width of 25.9 meters for shoreline structures, whereas section 4113-3BI permits a maximum cumulative width of 23 meters. At the previous hearing, a maximum cumulative width of 30.7 meters was proposed. The applicant has reduced the width by 4.8 meters. This was achieved by removing a section of the dock and rotating the shed. Variance 4. A dock, dryland boathouse, and shed to be constructed prior to the detached dwelling, whereas section 411 permits accessory buildings and structures to be constructed only on a lot where the principal use, being the dwelling, is already in existence. 5. A sleeping cabin having a 1.2 meter eave projection on all walls, whereas 4114K permits a 1.2 meter eave projection on one wall and a 0.6 meter eave projection on all other walls. And the final variance being requested is a shed with a legal non-complying status to be reconstructed and expanded, whereas section 411 does not permit an expansion. The lands are designated waterfront within the district and township official plans and are located within the Go Home Bay waterfront community. They are identified as having moderate to high archaeological potential and surrounded by fish habitat. In the township zoning bylaw, the lands are zoned Go Home Bay Shoreline Residential Island. Development is concentrated in one area, being the south end of the island with the least amount of vegetation. The applicant has advised that only trees within the future dwelling footprint and directly abutting such that appear to have reached the end of their life have been removed. The shoreline structures have been located along the section of the shoreline with type 2 fish habitat rather than type 1 fish habitat. Type 1 habitats are those which are high productive capacity, are rare, highly sensitive to development, or have a critical role in sustaining fisheries, whereas type 2 are moderately sensitive to development and not considered critical. The proposed sleeping cabin is triangular in shape and has a 1.2 meter eave projection on all 3 sides, whereas the zoning bylaw only permits a 1.2 meter eave projection on one wall. The sleeping cabin will be located beyond the future dwelling and 20 meters from the front lot line, while being surrounded by natural vegetation. Use from Georgian Bay of this building will be limited, if any. The official plan states that within Go Home Bay, sleeping cabins shall be limited to 1 story with a maximum height of 5 meters. The proposed sleeping cabin is limited to 1 story and has a height of 3.86 meters. The applicant is proposing the dryland boathouse have a width of 6.7 meters, whereas the maximum permitted width in the waterfront community is 6 meters. The zoning bylaw also restricts the length of dryland boathouses to 9 meters. The proposed boathouse has a length of 7.3 meters. The intent of these provisions are to limit the size of dryland boathouses, which occupy lands within the front yard of waterfront properties. This helps to reduce the visual impact of development from the water and prevents the shoreline from being overdeveloped. The dryland boathouse has an area of 43.8 square meters. The dimensions outlined in the zoning bylaw permit a boathouse with an even larger footprint of 54 square meters. The official plan contains policies regarding built form guidelines and shoreline structures within Go Home Bay. This section states that boathouses shall be limited to 1 story with a maximum height of 5 meters. The proposed dryland boathouse is 1 story and has a height of 3.96 meters. As supported by photos and a rendering sketch, the boathouse is situated on top of granite rock and surrounded by natural vegetation. The boathouse will have a neutral color palette, which softens the visual impact as well of the building on Georgian Bay. The shed is replacing an existing building with a legal non-complying front yard setback. The shed will maintain the existing front yard setback, however, will be increased in length and likely in height. The height of the existing shed was not documented prior to its removal. Applications to reconstruct or expand a legally non-compliant building should be evaluated under section 45(2) of the Planning Act and are only subject to two tests, being one, whether the application is desirable for appropriate development of the subject property, and two, whether the application will result in undue adverse impacts on the surrounding properties and neighborhood. When applying these tests, only the proposed expansion may be evaluated for undue adverse impacts. The intent and purpose of the official plan is not a relevant consideration when applying these tests. The proposed shed has been expanded by 0.6 meters on each end, resulting in a total increase of 3.84 square meters. The expansion is not interior space, rather landings or porches on each end of the building. The height of the existing shed was not documented prior to its removal, as mentioned previously. However, the proposed shed remains 1 story and has a height of 4 meters, which is a permitted height for accessory buildings. The proposed dock wraps around the contours of the granite rock shoreline, having an area of 91.9 square meters at a maximum width of 5.63 meters. In the Go Home Bay waterfront community, the zoning bylaw permits a maximum of 3 docks, provided the maximum cumulative area of all docks does not exceed 92.9 square meters at a maximum width of 3.1 meters. The intent of these provisions are to limit the size and number of docks to protect the aesthetics of the waterfront community by encouraging a natural shoreline and preventing it from being overdeveloped. The official plan states that docks shall be limited in number, width, and length in order to protect the natural shoreline quality and character. Only a portion of the proposed dock has a width of 5.63 meters, and it is the only dock on the island. The area of the dock complies with the zoning bylaw. Staff believe the design of the dock complements the contour of the granite rock and does not create a negative visual impact. Further, because of this design, the dock has a very small projection from the island into the water and does not create a navigational issue for boat traffic. The zoning bylaw limits the total cumulative width of shoreline structures to 10% of the lot frontage to a maximum of 23 meters, measured parallel to the shoreline. All land-based accessory structures within 10 meters of the high water mark shall be included in the calculation. Therefore, the shed, dryland boathouse, and dock are included in the cumulative width calculation. The total cumulative width of these structures is 25.9 meters, which represents a variance of 2.9 meters. At 22.7 meters, the combined width of the proposed dock and boathouse comply with the maximum permitted. Unfortunately, the legal non-complying location of the shed increases the total cumulative width to 25.9 meters. However, the shed is nestled in a pocket of natural vegetation. Further, the official plan contains policies to consider when a minor variance is being proposed, which includes considering the size of the structure in relation to the shoreline frontage, the lot area, and the low density and intensity nature of the waterfront community. Considering the extensive frontage and the dominating presence of granite rock and mature trees on the island, staff believe an increase of 2.9 square meters to the maximum permitted cumulative width of shoreline structures is appropriate. Planning staff have completed a detailed analysis of the variances to the zoning bylaw being requested in the associated report and are recommending approval of all, subject to conditions, because the application meets the test of a minor variance in accordance with sections 45(1) and 45(2) of the Planning Act. The conditions aim to ensure that natural and potential archaeological features are not being negatively impacted by the development through the requirement of a fish habitat impact assessment and a stage 1 archaeological assessment. At this hearing, the committee can either approve or deny with reasons any one of the following variances being requested. However, to deny the minor variance regarding the shed, the undue adverse impacts of the proposed expansion must be demonstrated by objective evidence and must be sufficient to override the property owner's right to reasonable flexibility, evolution, and expansion. The committee can defer the application to a later date provided that additional information is required to come to a decision. for which committee would need to identify. Thank you.
3 letters of no objection were received from Andre Musso, Tim Leesman, John O'Hara. 4 letters of objection were received from Kathy Cooper, the Madawaska Club of Go Home Bay, James and Ann Peterson, and Mark Smith.
Your mic needs to be on. The little red light will come on.
Sorry, Charles Gain, the owner and the applicant.
Thank you very much. So, please proceed. And as I said before, we're looking for
Yeah.
new information. And
Sure.
I see there's been some new developments since.
No, Shania gave all the important information, and it's just my hope that these revisions, like chopping 10 feet off the dock, it brings the dock back within the area requirement. And it also reduces the accumulated width. And then by having this shed there, it wasn't, the shed was skewed in relation to an average shoreline. So we're going to lift the shed up, we're going to rotate it. So it's going to appear narrower. It's not going to be narrower, but the addition of those two, it reduces the accumulated width by almost 5 meters. So I think that's a positive thing because the accumulated width was in the 30s and now it's 25.9. So I hope this goes a long way to, relieving the concerns that the MAD Club had and maybe the committee had. And the other variances, I think they all satisfy the 4 tests.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I see distinguished Peter Folds in attendance. Did you have some comments? I see you're registered as well.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm here on behalf of the Madawaska Club of Go Home Bay. My address for the record is 31834 Georgian Bay Shore. I have submitted a written comment, which I assume you've all had a chance to read, and I won't repeat that. I do have a short PowerPoint presentation if I could share my screen. Thank you. As the township planner indicated, there are a total of 6 variances being requested with respect to this property. My comments are going to be focused entirely on item number 3, which is the cumulative width of shoreline structures. Just for a refresher, the dock, which is already built, has an east-facing side, which is currently 60 feet in length, and a south-facing side, which is currently 45 feet in length. What I'm showing you now is the amended site plan, which Mr. Gain has filed with the township. And the 2 changes from the previous application are, one, he's proposing to reduce the length of the dock by 3.1 meters at the north end. And secondly, he's proposing to rotate the shed so that it lines up with the measurement of the cumulative width of shoreline structures. And I want to acknowledge that that's a step in the right direction, and we're pleased to see proposal to reduce the dock length. However, in our submission, it does not go far enough. I think when we're looking at cumulative width of shoreline structures, we have to look at it in the context of the development as a whole. And we've got a lot going on in this one concentrated area, the shoreline. We've got the Gain is elected to retain and expand the existing non-conforming shed. He's elected to build a boathouse, for which he is seeking a variance to increase its width. And then there's the dock itself. The proposal to rotate the shed, while it will reduce the technical measurement of the cumulative width of shoreline structures, in our submission, it really does little, if anything, to reduce the visual impact of those shoreline structures, and I think that has to be kept in mind. As I indicated in my report, and the provisions of the Go Home Bay Community Plan speak specifically to the need to protect the character of the waterfront and providing clear guidelines respecting docks, boathouses, sheds, and other accessory structures. I thought it'd be useful to illustrate this to the committee. What I'm showing you here, the property marked in blue is the subject property, and the other properties marked in red or orange. The owners of all of those properties have filed objections either on the previous application or this application. The ones marked in red have filed letters of objection on this specific application. And I think I wanted to show you that because I think it does demonstrate in a constructive way how this development is going to impact the neighboring property owners. The other two filed letters of application at the previous hearing in September, or sorry, letters of objection at the previous hearing. And I think, I don't know what their position is with respect to the current application. And I think there's some confusion as to whether this was going to be a new hearing or a continuation of the previous hearing. But in any event, the three that are dark red have filed letters of objection for this hearing.
Okay, thank you.
So what we're asking for is, we're asking again, only with respect to one of the variances, that the committee deny the variance for cumulative width and shoreline structures. In our submission, the dock should be shortened by a total of 6 meters, not 3.1 meters. And because the dock has already been constructed, in my submission, it should be a condition of the granting of any of the other variances that the dock, the east face of the dock, should be shortened by not less than 6 meters, so that we know that that will happen. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much for that and for the conciseness of your comments. Do we have anyone else online or in person that would like to comment on this application? I see no one here or no one online that is doing that or who has raised their hand. So I will close the public portion of this application and bring the application before the committee for questions or comments. And because there are such a number of variances required in this, I want to try as much as possible to eliminate any confusion. So, but what I would like to do is look at those variances on an individual basis and see if we have any concerns about those variances, and it's so at the end when we come to take a vote, we will have discussed the whole idea. But I think there's a central theme here. But let's start off with the with a brief discussion here of the shed. You'd heard from the applicant that they have made an attempt or are proposing to reorient that in order to reduce some of the accumulative width. And as the planner mentioned, this is the this portion of the application is subject to section 45 2, wherein the 2 points that we need to discuss are whether the desirability and whether it would have any the shed only at this particular point that we're talking about would have any adverse effects on the surrounding area. So are there any questions in regard to that shed that you'd like to bring forward? And I see a hand up by member Predko. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, I would just like to ask the planning department. So the shed is a shoreline structure, and I know it's legal non-conforming. If the applicant is proposing to move the shed slightly to decrease the cumulative shoreline, if the applicant were moving that shed, is it feasible to have it moved back so it's no longer considered a shoreline structure and removed from the cumulative width, or is that an unreasonable move? Would have to go back to the 20-meter line? Is that the issue?
Through the chair, for a building or structure to not be included in cumulative width calculations, it needs to be set back 10 meters from the high water mark. Given the vegetation on the lot and the tree line, how it's not a straight line, it's kind of wavy there. I believe the 10 meters will put him in a position where he will need to remove more vegetation.
Could we possibly get your response to that, Mr. Gain? And I think what Mr. Penko is asking, valid question, is
Shania,
could that shed be moved back a little bit?
It's in a really good spot now. Shania, could you bring up that photo of the site taken from the rock from the south? You'll see the shed is almost hidden to where it is right now. And the shed is only 10 feet by 20 feet. And so I think it's a pretty minor thing.
I did notice that it is hidden. I was just trying to
actually that is where the shed is. So, it's basically going to be hidden. And yes, it could be pushed back a bit, but then it, like she said, it starts to obstruct other trees. But the shed and the dock house and the dryland boathouse, they kind of work together. It's kind of, now they're like at 90 degrees to each other. They're kind of a nice little big brother, small brother. I kind of like that from a design point of view. And they're both going to be dark gray. So I think the feeling of it on site, it'll recede. Yeah. It's just storage of contents. I mean, it was there and it was 10 by 20. I left it the same place. I added a little porch both sides, but I gave it the 3 and 12 slope that is in the go home bylaw. It was a different roof slope.
Okay.
That's all, thank you.
That was that. Is there anything regarding the shed, Member Jarvis? No? No, and no. About the shed? Yes. Okay. Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, it's kind of two parts because the shed is cumulative width.
Yeah.
And I understand the challenge of maybe moving it back, and we were on site, and I don't think you could move it back 10 meters from the high water mark.
And could I just, for clarification, like we're talking about cumulative width here, this is, you add the buildings together. It's not from the outside of this shed to the outside of that shed, right?
Right.
Yeah, so it's this shed, and the dock.
Yeah.
So if you eliminated the shed, we've eliminated the cumulative width problem.
Correct. The dock and the dryland boathouse satisfy the 23 meters, but the shed bumps it over by 2 points.
My question is either the shed could go or another 10 feet of the dock could go, and cumulative width is satisfied, in my humble opinion.
Well, that's why I'm here. I think it's a minor variance in the extra length width.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
it's 2.9 meters over the 23.
And again, let's just try and keep this clear. The width of the dock, where
Yeah.
Member Matthews is, suggesting if that were shorter, the cumulative width,
Yeah.
need for a variance would go away. Is that a?
I mean, it's a possibility, but I think in the realm of
Okay,
minor
I
variances.
see our esteemed planner has her hand up.
Through the chair, I just want to clarify the cumulative width. So, the member of the committee was right when he said that the dock and dryland boathouse, the cumulative width of those two structures does comply with the maximum permitted in the zoning bylaw. Because the shed is within 10 meters of the high water mark, it then gets included. So there's a couple options. He could, again, remove another section of the dock, which actually the overall size of the dock is in compliance with the zoning bylaw. Or he could take the shed and move it 10 meters back, which may result in some trees being removed. That is my understanding. Those are his options here.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for that. So we're all on the same page with
Yeah.
that, and just to be clear, you'd like to stay with where it is?
Well, I'd like to propose that it stays because I think it's quite a minor thing in the whole.
Okay. All right, so we sort of covered two areas there with one. So while we're on that, let's go to the second part of this variance that we're asking for and talk about a cumulative width or cumulative width. Is there any question that you would have on that subject, Member Jarvis?
Thank you. To the planner, you indicate the part of the boathouse that contributes to the cumulative width is the 6.7 meters. That is the actual width of the boathouse, correct?
Yeah.
Or is it the 7.3?
To the chair, the width is the 6.7.
Whatever it is. 6.
But that's, the boathouse width is separate from the cumulative width of shoreline structures. I just want to make sure we're clear
Okay,
there.
it wasn't part of the cumulative.
They're
Does it
measured differently.
clarify? So the boathouse is not contributing to the cumulative width.
Yes, it is. And this is why I've broken them up. So
Yeah.
there's no confusion here.
But there's an overlap. So it's not the.
So it's because of the overlap that we have. Okay, thank you
Through
very
the
much.
chair, that is
Cumulative,
correct.
I see that. Okay. Thank you for the clarification. That's all I needed.
Okay, now that you're clarified, do you have an objection to that, or is it, are you okay with that now that you have the understanding?
Can I ask another question?
Was that a question?
That was a question. Really quickly, in the design here, there's a floating dock. Do floating docks contribute to the cumulative width? There's one illustrated here. Oh, is that existing floating dock? Excuse me. Take that away. I've been to the site. I have to admit that when you have ice and water shield or whatever on a shoreline structure, it tends to stand out. I appreciate that the siding that will be going on will make things significantly less intrusive. And in that context, I don't have any objections.
Okay. Member Predko.
I'm gonna ask the same question again about the dry boathouse as the shed. Is it possible to have that nestled farther back? If something has to move, could it be moved to the northwest slightly? I'm trying to find the picture of the topography again. To enable that to both be either moved away from the shore to decrease the cumulative width or remove it from shoreline structure.
You know, it's actually not part of the cumulative width now. So
I thought it's.
but it's in a great spot. And what I felt was there's a huge oak tree behind it, like a 120-year-old oak tree. So I was cognizant of the fact that I didn't want to push it too far. You get close to the big oak tree. I don't know if you can see it behind it. So I think it's in a pretty good spot.
Okay.
That's my.
Just wanted to clarify.
Okay. Anything on that? So what we are talking about then is just to put that in perspective. We were talking about the boathouse, where the application is asking for a width of 6.7 meters, where 6 meters is required. So that's basically, if you look at it, we're going from 22 feet wide to 20 feet. So it's 2 feet difference in width. Does anybody have a question or concern about that area of the application? Okay. The same thing that we talked about here, and again, maybe just to summarize that cumulative width, the requirement here, or the ask for the variance, is 25.9 meters, where 23 meters is required. So the difference is, in imperial measure, 85 feet versus 75 feet. So we're talking a 10-foot difference. And if you wanted to look at it in another evaluation, the shoreline that is part of this property goes all the way around. It's an island. So we're talking, you know, a couple thousand feet here. So we're talking a request of 10 feet in on that amount of shoreline that's there. Next item on the list of variances, we have the eave overhang on the sleeping cabin. And as you would have read in the presentation, the bylaw allows for 1.2 meters on one side. But I remember at our last the last committee meeting where we had this application in front of us, the applicant presented us with a concept of the design of this cottage, wherein the overhang for the main structure is going to be on all 4 sides, and the request, of course, is to keep the sides here on this shed comparable with that. So I would ask then on that particular question, does anybody have any questions or concerns about the eave overhang? Everybody's good with that? All right. Okay. So in summary then, we talked about the expansion. We have left to talk about the expansion of the legal non-complying shed. Are there any concerns? And what I wanted to point out here again, the entire property on this island is 3.1 hectares, which is a little bit shy of 8 acres. So the property that the Gain Cottage is sitting on is about 8 acres. The frontage on this, again calculated by our in part of as part of the report, is 260 meters. So there's 853 feet of water frontage here. So just getting back to the shed, the shed expansion is an expansion to a legal non-complying building. Are there any questions or comments here regarding the desirability or any concerns about reverse impact in the area? No questions?
Not the expansion.
The cumulative.
Expansion.
Okay. And again, it seems from the comments that I'm getting, the only thing that is concern to committee members is the cumulative width. Am I correct in that? Does anybody have a question or a concern outside of that, other than Mr. Jarvis? Go ahead.
I'm just curious because in our planners notes, the Committee of Adjustments options, I look at option 4, and maybe you are going to be considering that, but I just want to bring that to your attention. It states the dock, dryland, boathouse shed to be constructed prior to the detached dwelling Whereas section 4.1.1 permits accessory buildings and structures to be constructed only on a lot where the principal use dwelling is already in existence. So there is another item there I think we should be considering.
Well,
correct?
I appreciate you bringing that forward. I'm sure you've visited this.
Oh,
site.
yes.
You understand that those, the dock and the boathouse and the shed are already in existence. And from the discussion we've had around here today, I don't see too many objections to the finished product. So you're right, you know,
I just think we need to,
but
that needs to be
as-
consideration.
As our planner mentioned at the beginning of her presentation, it is not part of the purview of the Committee of Adjustment to.
It's here as a committee's option. It's listed.
Well,
Committee of Adjustment options.
I think it's
Approve or deny.
I think it's housekeeping.
Well,
and if you have an objection to that, and would care to go on the record, what would it be? And what would your remedy suggestion be?
I don't have a remedy, and I was going to ask the planning department if there was a possible remedy in this regard, because it is here. It exists as an option to us. I have no real objections with what else is being presented for minor variance. Though the recommendation of reducing the size of the dock further is, to me, a reasonable remedy if it can be achieved. But I'm just wondering about that option that's been provided to us, and if there is something, what are our options, given that that's listed?
Well, and again, I don't want to spend a lot of time on that because I think it's more of a housekeeping thing. Shania has a response.
Through the chair, I just want to clarify the section that he's referring to. It's in my report. It's the last section. It says Committee of Adjustments options, and it says the committee can either approve or deny any one of the following variances being requested. And I did include that as a variance. I didn't go into detail on it through my presentation, but I did include an analysis of that in my report. And I do have the list of variances shown on the screen to provide further clarification as to what's being requested.
Okay. Member Schmidt.
So, and just a point of clarification, if I could, I know that there's some limitations on size of docks in the community plan here. If that dock in its current design was to go perpendicular to the shore and extend out into the waterway, would we be having this argument right now?
Through the chair, if the applicant were to rotate the dock so that it is projecting further into the Georgian Bay, we would likely not be looking at this variance. It's because how
I understand. Yep, I understand that part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess my comment as I've sat and reviewed and looked at the visual impact on the area. There used to be a perpendicular dock hanging out, which, as we know, you start putting whips and docks and stuff hanging out into a beautiful waterway, I believe has a more adverse visual impact and less respect to the area than something hugged to the granite that's going to turn gray. So I find this proposal of dock situation a more respectful avenue where they could have taken a straight out. That's just my comment, because I think that offsets some of a 8.5 foot or 10 foot accumulative addition to what's proposed.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
Thank you, Member Schmidt. I see that we have Member Rivet has her hand up online. Do you have any questions or comments? Please go ahead.
Actually, I think I'll just reserve until I hear from everyone else, if I could, Chair. Thank you.
So you're going to reserve? Your
Yes. I'll reserve my comments. Thank you.
Okay, okay, I'm sorry. Did I see a question from Mr. Folds?
I just had a comment with respect to Member Schmidt's question about if the dock were rotated so that it was projecting out from the shore. There is there is in the bylaw a limit on dock projection from the shoreline out to the end of the dock, which I believe, and I haven't looked it up recently, but I believe it's 45 feet, something in that range. So 15 meters. So
45.
there is a limit on that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then, I have the resolution here, and what I want to do here, is that we have 6 items on this, resolution, 6, items that are contained within the minor variance. And from what I can tell in the comments and questions that have been provided, of those 6, there are no, or any questions or concerns about 5 of them have been answered to the satisfaction of the members that are on committee.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have 1 left. And one of the problems that I find with applications like this that have multiple steps is that you don't get asked 6 questions, you only get asked 1. And when you say yes or no, if there's only 1 item on here that is not acceptable to the committee, then we need to identify that one and approve the ones that we are satisfied with. And a question from Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a point of clarity, you're suggesting we will take a vote on item 1, item 2, item 3, and item 4 separately, 5 and 6.
Or we would have, before we do that,
consensus?
A consensus, and maybe just before we do the consensus, it's an open conversation here about everybody that's involved in this in the room. The item that we're not entirely all on the same page on has to do with the cumulative width.
Right.
And I would ask perhaps the applicant or somebody in the planning department, is there what are the options here? Is there an option here that we could agree on that would allow us to move forward on this? And I'm assuming the Madawaska Club has the same concern. It's the cumulative width that was in your presentation that is the concern. If the dock, and I'm asking this to no one in particular, but everybody in general, if the dock was 10 feet shorter, would this condition go away? Would the application meet the requirement for cumulative width? And I'm asking that to our planner. Who's looking at the answer?
Through the chair, the variance being requested for the cumulative width is 2.9 meters. It can be done a few ways. He can reduce the width of the dock. He can relocate the shed behind 10 meters. He can also move the location of the boathouse so that it is behind the dock or almost. That would also, these are all 3 ways that can reduce the cumulative width variance, the need for it, or just the number in general. The problem is, and my understanding is, 2 of those options, we're looking at reducing we have to remove some vegetation likely, based off of my site visit and what I'm seeing in site photos.
Move the boathouse, move the shed, shorten the dock. Are those the 3 things?
Those are the 3
Okay.
options.
Mr. Gain has already stated his position on 2 out of 3 of those, and having visited the site, moving that boathouse is not.
Boathouse is big.
The shed, on the other hand, is.
The shed is, yeah, I mean, the shed is light and it can be moved around, but it's in a really great spot now.
And so how much dock is left when you take,
Well, I'd have about 30 feet left. Wait, I'd have 40 feet left.
You got almost 100
Yeah.
feet. Oh,
Yeah, no, I mean, for sure. It's just the dock is, it's in a great spot and it's hugging the shore and it's not trying to be a big over obtrusive dock. It would be kind of a shame to cut off another 10 feet of it. But because I know this shed is, I mean, the cumulative width is kind of a theoretical thing. I mean, you said it best. It's like I've got 1,000 linear feet of shoreline and I have 10 feet extra of something. You know,
The situation that we're in, though, as you can see here, I don't need to draw a picture, is that, you know, that 10 feet
yeah.
could be a showstopper here.
Well, I'm gonna take that shed away if it's a problem, but right now it's housing all my contents of all my cottage.
The point is, in a few minutes, this committee is going to pass a decision either to, and probably not defer, so it's either gonna be approved or defeat. And it's all around that 10 feet, so.
Well, you put it that way, but I mean, I'm throwing myself at your mercy because it's, I mean, it is, I think it is a minor, I think it satisfies the test of a minor variance. It's like almost within 10%. It's like 12%, I think I made the calculation. So.
Are you waving or one question? Okay, all right, so just so we're clear.
No,
I
mean,
don't think we
wanna
make it any more clear than that.
I don't
so
want to scupper the whole thing because of a 10-foot shed, but I
well,
think
you we're in a position right now where if you say leave it as is, this committee is going to vote. Okay. So I'm sorry. Okay, I don't see that. Yeah, we have comments coming in on the thing, so I'll give you another minute or two to think about that. Yeah. Okay, so that was just one of the members online, and she's exactly in sync with the rest of us. So, okay.
Yeah, so if I have to make it comply, I'm gonna chop another 10 feet off the dock. But the question is, do I have to?
How do I put this in more clear words? You know, you can say, yes, I will do that, and you can satisfy our planner that we make a small adjustment in the resolution to include that, or you can say, okay, you guys, we're gonna go with what we have, so.
Through the chair, we have to respect the fact that they've requested a minor variance for this.
Yeah.
We can't say, let's remove the minor variance. Like,
No,
they've
hear
made
you.
this request, so we have
Trying
to
be-
respect
trying to give
that.
the applicant the opportunity to, you know, the obstacle is very plain. And I take it that you would like to go with the application as presented. Okay, so having said that, are there no further questions or concerns? There are questions or concerns, and that might be.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess it's a procedural concern. We're going to vote on all 6, even though we may not agree on one.
Through the chair, you can either approve or deny any one of the variances. Just because 6 variances were requested doesn't mean you have to refuse or approve all 6. You have the option to go through the list and say, like, take a vote on each variance being requested.
That was to my point earlier,
Yes.
because if we lump them all together and there's one little glitch, you could lose the entire application.
Yeah. Well, the
For
point
10 feet is all I'm suggesting.
in order to make that happen, then I believe we need to have 6 resolutions. We only have one, so we can, you know, we've got some flexibility here. We can get 6 resolutions, or I can read it as 6, and we can have the paperwork show up to match, and that's probably the best thing to do. And then if the one portion of that resolution is not met, you know, is the applicant then required to bring that to dock into compliance? Okay.
Mr. Chair, through you. the applicant would also have the option of appealing that portion that was defeated or denied.
Okay, all right, that's good. And
But keep in mind as well that the township staff would not be able to support the township on it because Shania's recommendation was approval.
yes. Okay, got it. Mr. Foltz.
If I may, the application currently before you with respect to cumulative width is to allow variance to increase the cumulative width to 25.9 meters. That assumes, as Mr. Gain has proposed, that he was going to reduce the dock by 10 feet. He has to do that to get to the 25.9 meters. So
Good
if
point.
you-
I had assumed that was already done.
Yeah, if you grant the application for 25.9 meters, then the shed stays where it is and he reduces the dock by 10 feet. If you refuse that application, then he's limited to 23 meters. And at that point, in my view, he still has the option, if he decides at a later date, to move the shed, in which case he would be compliant, or to shorten the dock by an additional 10 feet, in which case he would be compliant.
Okay, but I think that's is that the general understanding we all have on that? I think that's where we were coming from, so. All right, then we're gonna move forward. I will read the resolution and I'm gonna, there's 6 parts to this and we will vote on each part as if it was a resolution on its own, and following that, I will present the members with the conditions under which that approval will apply. So it is moved by member Schmidt, seconded by member Matthews. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment hereby approves the following variances requested under minor variance application A 23-10. 1, a dryland boathouse having a width of 6.7 meters, whereas section 4.1.12.4A of the zoning bylaw permits a maximum width of 6 meters. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. And you can check. Okay, that option is carried. Number 2, that a dock having a maximum width of 5.63 meters, whereas section 4.1.3.2N permits a maximum width of 3.1 meters. All those in favor of that? That motion is carried. Number 3, a maximum permitted cumulative width of 25.9 meters for shoreline structures, whereas section 4.1.133B permits the maximum cumulative width of 23 meters. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. That section is denied. Number 4, that a dock, dryland boathouse, and shed be constructed prior to the detached dwelling, whereas section 4.1.1 permits accessory buildings and structures to be constructed only on a lot where the principal use or dwelling is already in existence. All in favor of that, please signify by raising your hand. That portion is carried. Number 5, a sleeping cabin having 1.1 meter E projection on all walls where 4.1.14 K permits a 1.2 meter E projection on one wall and a 0.6 meter E projection on all other walls. All in favor of that section, please signify by raising your hand. That is carried. And finally, a shed with legal non-conforming status to be reconstructed and expanded, whereas section 4.11 does not permit an expansion. All those in favor of that section, please signify by raising your hand. Okay, that section is carried. Therein, we have 5 of the 6 approved where 1 is denied. And the conditions under which these are approved is number 1 is that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. 2, that this decision applies only to the dock, dryland, boathouse, sleeping cabin, and shed as indicated in Schedule A attached to and forming part of this decision. Any other variances that may appear in the schedules that are not listed in the written decision are not authorized. Number 3, that the owner retain qualified professionals at the owner's expense to complete a fish habitat impact assessment and a stage 1 archaeological assessment. 4, that prior to the issuance of a building permit, that the fish habitat impact assessment be peer reviewed at the owner's expense and that the recommendations of the peer review be implemented to the satisfaction of the township. And 5, that prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicants supply the township with a copy of a stage 1 archaeological assessment and written confirmation that the assessment has been entered in the Ontario Public Registry of Archaeological Reports and that the assessment has been implemented to the satisfaction of the township. Number 6, that in accordance with section 45, subsection 9.1 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, as amended, the owner shall enter into 1 or more agreements with the township implementing the recommendations of fish habitat impact assessment and stage 1 archaeological assessment if deemed necessary by the township. And number 7, that in accordance with section 45, subsection 9.2 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, as amended, upon the owner's upon a final approval by the township, the agreements noted in condition 6 shall be registered at the owner's expense against the title of the land. Subject to this approval, and the township will be entitled to enforce said agreements against the owner and subject to the Registry Act and the Lands Titles Act against all and subsequent owners of the land if it deemed necessary by the township. And number 8, that the owner enter an undertaking agreement with the Township of Georgian Bay to ensure that a permit for the dwelling is obtained and that construction completed prior to the expiration of the minor variance application. And 9, that this decision expires 3 years from the date of the chief planner accepting the studies and building permits that have not been issued for the development, if building permits have not been issued for the development. Therein, the motion to approve 5 out of 6 is carried and 1 is denied. Thank you. And we'll get some paperwork done to record that, so you know where you're at. Okay, and thank you both for your persistence through this. I think we got it nailed.
Chair, now that we've voted on all of this, just to confirm that the dock is still not compliant in its length because the application was to remove 10 feet of it, but there's still, I guess, work to be done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
pardon me for
I-
just 1 second, if I may, a little indulgent. If you're saying that you're prepared to move the 10 feet of the dock.
Sorry,
do
the
that.
vote's already been called, so we have to stop the conversation, move
I
on to the
just
next
got that.
application.
I'm fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and with your permission, I'll share my screen. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, everyone in attendance, both here and online. For the record, my name is Jeff Kratke, and I am a registered professional planner employed full-time by the Township of Georgian Bay. Application number A2345 regarding subject lands at 14 Island 20 Severn River, now being considered by the committee, is made by Carmen D'Angelo as the agent on behalf of the owner. The purpose of the application regarding the subject lands is under subsection 45(2) of the Planning Act and varies subsections 411E2(1) and 411E4 of the zoning bylaw, exceeding maximum increase in gross floor area from 40% to 158%. Subsections 411E22 and 411E4 of the zoning bylaw exceeding the maximum increase in dwelling width from 30% to 126%. Notwithstanding, the third variance is notwithstanding subsection 411E5 of the zoning bylaw, that a variance may be granted regarding the maximum lot coverage. Number 4, subsection 4.14C of the zoning bylaw, reducing the minimum shoreline setback from 20 meters to 15.45 meters. Number 5, subsection 4.30AI decreases the shoreline activity area from 90% to 60%, exceeding the maximum 25% natural state shoreline area. Number 6, subsection 4.41 of the zoning bylaw, reducing the water bodies and water courses setback from 20 meters to 14.08 meters. And subsection 7, table 6.2 in subsection 6.3 of the zoning bylaw regarding the maximum lot coverage is increased from 5% to 8.3%, and the minimum required front yard is reduced from 30 meters to 15.45 meters. The effect of the application allows a new shoreline residential dwelling on the subject lands having setbacks from Little Lake of 14.09 meters for the proposed deck and 15.45 meters for the dwelling, while the legal non-conforming shoreline dwelling had a 13.98 meter setback. However, the new shoreline residential dwelling increases in size from 75 square meters GFA to 193.7337 square meters GFA, and width from 9 meters to 11.3708 meters. The legal non-conforming shoreline activity area is decreased, but still exceeds the permitted. The site is located not far from us on the opposite side of the Severn River on an island. The site plan was prepared by a surveyor and includes very important statistics that you can read in my report. The proposed dwelling is essentially the dark line here. The former legal non-conforming dwelling is the lighter gray line here. The two dwellings, or accessory buildings rather, not dwellings, pardon me. The two accessory buildings that were demolished are here. The one accessory building that is to remain is here. The sketch plans submitted by the agent include elevations of both the front and the rear of the proposed dwelling, the sides of the proposed dwelling, as well as first floor, second floor plans, and a sectional. There's another drawing of the foundational elements, but I didn't think that was worthy of display here. An environmental impact study was required to support the application that is before the committee. Key recommendations of that study are that bat-friendly lighting be put in place, that an environmental, the ESCP plan to protect the fish habitat, and that renaturalization in this area take place along the shoreline. The EIS was peer-reviewed on behalf of the township, and there were requests to update the EIS to more clearly delineate the Fish One habitat, as well as indicate conformity with the Federal Fisheries Act. On November 14th, which was after my report was finalized, the EIS update was received by the township, and I can say that it is acceptable, but there is no need to revise the recommendation before the committee because the conditions do allow township staff, myself, to waive it after the fact. The agent's rationale, which I won't get into detail because it's certainly in my report, but there are some key things. One of the key things is that they are hoping to maximize the setback for the septic by the placement of this proposed dwelling. And secondly, that they are trying to preserve trees by expanding on the existing footprint of the previously existing legal non-conforming shoreline dwelling, as opposed to moving further back where they would be removing more trees. The natural constraints are a little bit odd in this case, and I wanted to bring it to your attention that in this case, the mapping from the MNR, which is reflected in both the districts and our own official plan, shows the fish habitat to the north side of the subject lands, whereas the EIS found that in fact the fish habitat type 1 is more on the southerly side of the dwelling. I also want to point out that unfortunately our district mapping layer, the parcel fabric is in this location very much out of touch with reality. And essentially, if you can picture that entire red subject site shifting to the north, it's more reflective of its actual location. The hazardous lands are identified here in the district's mapping. They do not affect the development of the subject lands. As well, the forest fire hazard types do not cause any concern for this development. The Georgian Bay Township official plan designates the subject lands as waterfront and the Port Severn Intake Protection Zone, with your pertinent parts of Little Lake fish habitat types 1 and 2 and moderate sensitive water bodies. The adjacent lands on the island outside of the Port Severn Urban Center are the similar designations. However, obviously, when you cross this red line in the middle between the two shores of Little Lake in this location, you get into the Port Severn Urban Center, which has very, very different designations. However, in my review of this report, I did not view that as meaningful given that they are the opposite shore. The subject lands are zoned type 4 residential, and the adjacent lands outside of the Port Severn urban area are similarly zoned. Again, once you get into the Port Severn urban area, it's a very different set of zones. The Google satellite image, and again, this is relying on our parcel fabric, which is woefully out of date, and I would suggest it probably is somewhere here that is the northern boundary of the lot line, shows that there is similar development close to the shore in certain locations. No comments were received from the public. A comment was received from the Severn Sound Environmental Association. However, as I discussed in detail in my report, I believe our building department is addressing those comments. My analysis and options of the 82345 application is that it is consistent with the PPS so long as the committee approves the conditions that are recommended, and in particular that the district confirms no impact on the Port Severn WWTP outfall, and that the EIS recommendations are made enforceable under the minor variance agreement. Subject to the recommended conditions, the application passes the 2 tests appropriate under subsection 45(2) for the legal non-conforming use. And certainly while the committee does have options, I recommend that the committee approve the application subject to the conditions, including the minor variance agreement. I'm not going to reread the recommendation because it is lengthy and you may hear it again. I will note that the conditions of approval are that the owner at their cost shall enter into a minor variance agreement with the township regarding and registered upon the subject lands deemed appropriate by township staff at their discretion, given its purposes described in the development services report that I wrote and is attached to your agenda today. Number two. Sure. Well, no, these are just the conditions. I'm just reading the conditions because I haven't read the conditions before, sir. Okay, well then we'll skip on to one important point. And one of the key conditions is the minor variance agreement. I will say that since my report was written, new information was brought to my attention by the agent that I confirmed in our building department files that there is evidence that the two accessory buildings that are to be demolished and are subject to purpose number 3 are demolished. However, I don't recommend revising my recommendation to you because the condition allows me to waive that at a later date. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kratky. Madam Secretary, has there been any correspondence in this application?
One letter of correspondence was received from the Severn Sound Environmental Association. I'm just going to read the comments that the planning department provided me. It's a little bit lengthy, so just bear with me. Their risk management official stated the property is located within the intake protection zone IPZ1 of the Port Severn Municipal Drinking Water System with a vulnerability score of 10. None of the policies implemented by the Township of Georgian Bay risk management official and the approved South Georgian Bay Lake Simcoe source protection plan apply. Neither Section 57 nor Section 58 of the Clean Water Act 2006 apply to the application, and as such, no additional notes, letters, or requirements from the Township of Georgian Bay risk management official are required as the application is currently presented. And lastly, one of the 22 significant drinking water threats under the Clean Water Act 2006 is on-site sewage systems. As the property is an existing lot of record, policy SEWG-4 in the South Georgia Bay Lake Simcoe Source Protection Plan would apply. This would require the on-site sewage system to be inspected every 5 years. And that's everything.
Great, thank you. Is the applicant present and would they wish to address the committee? If so, please turn on the microphone and identify yourself with your name and address, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of committee. My name is Carmen D'Angelo. I submitted the application on behalf of my wife, Ellen Begin, and my mother-in-law, Jean Begin, who own the property. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. However, I did reviewed the report from Mr. Kratky, looked at the conditions required, explained it to my wife and my mother-in-law, and they're both agreeable to meet all conditions as indicated in the staff report. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you for coming and being here. Is there any member of the public that wishes to address the committee on this application? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public session, bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. And, Mr. Jarvis.
Almost always first. A couple of questions for a planner. You mentioned septic. And because you mentioned it, I'm going to ask the question. I note that you're saying that if it was to comply with our GB zoning bylaw with a greater setback, that we'd have to move the septic. So where's the septic currently?
No, so point of clarification, and if I did misspeak, I apologize. The septic is being proposed at the extreme rear of the property.
Okay.
And there is an image of that in the EIS.
Okay.
Which I can certainly bring up if it would help.
I take your word on it. I just wanted to make sure that which makes sense to me anyway. So I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Thank you. And then another comment is in that area, we do not have size restraints per se, correct?
All the gross floor area and width restraints are part of section 4 of our bylaw with regards to the legal non-conforming use.
Yes.
And while our official plan and zoning bylaw are not up to date, they provide limitations that may not be supportable should we choose to implement them.
And what would, out of curiosity, what would they be? What are the limitations that we have on file currently then?
The limitations are listed in the purposes
Never
of
mind.
the.
Don't worry about it. It's fine.
We'll get on to that.
Yeah, I'll make the observation. I was just gonna make the observation that we are looking at a small building that is being increased to basically what we would consider to be a comfortable building, even on a smaller scale compared to other things we've seen. And just because we're going from very small to whatever size it's going to, it looks like a big increase. But in fact, when you look at what's the resulting development, it doesn't look that big to me. So that was it.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And I agree, and that's why I included the actual numbers in the effect.
Yeah. Member Predke. Redco.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, Mr. Cracky, just a quick question on shoreline activity area. This isn't a condition we usually see on a minor variance, so it's in the middle of your report under the desirable development test. You indicate that the current shoreline activity area is 100% and it's 90% in other areas. But how is this calculated? I know it's going down to approximately 60%, but what is the shoreline area activity calculation?
So the shoreline area activity calculation was done through the EIS, and it is approximate because vegetation obviously is not able to be measured to precise limits. But that being said, in this case, the original legal non-conforming rights are from the 1950s. And certainly the natural shoreline activity area had not been dreamt of at that point in time. Our official plan, which doesn't necessarily apply, but through the PPS and the fish habitat was able to guide this exercise, is intended to achieve a net improvement even where we do not necessarily make the requirement in terms of a variation. And in this case, there is a significant improvement on the net amount. It is still not meeting the bylaw and therefore does still require a variation. But that being said, it is designed through the EIS to protect the type 1 fish habitat.
Okay, thank you. And then that improvement is the naturalization that's on the south corner of the property.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
One of the zoning act exceeds the maximum increase in gross floor area from 40% to 158%. Subsection 4.1 E22 and 4E4 of the zoning bylaw exceeding the maximum increase in dwelling from 30% to 126%. And 3, notwithstanding subsection 411E5 of the zoning bylaw, that a variance may be granted regarding the maximum lot coverage. Subsection 4 or section 4 is subsection 4.14 subsection C of the zoning act, reducing minimum shoreline setback from 20 meters to 15.45 meters. Item 5, subsection 4.3 AI, decreases the shoreline activity area from 90% to 60%, exceeding the maximum 25% natural state shoreline area. Item 6, subsection 4.41 of the zoning bylaw, reducing the water bodies and water courses setback from 20 meters to 14.08 meters. And item 7, table 6.2 of subsection table 6.3 of the zoning bylaw regarding A, Minor, maximum lot coverage is increased from 5% to 8.3%. And B, minimum required front yard is reduced from 30 meters to 15.45 meters. And all of these are subject to the following conditions. Number one, that the owner at their cost shall enter a minor variance agreement with the township regarding the registered upon the subject lands deemed appropriate by township staff at their discretion, given its purposes described in the Development Services Development Staff Report regarding A 23-45 application. And two, that the owner provide a copy of the environmental impact study regarding A 23-45 application. The subject lands. Sorry.
You said stability.
My system had enough with you guys. Okay. And number three, that the owner provide to the township staff written confirmation from staff at the District of Muskoka stating that there's no impact on the development proposed on the subject lands by A 23-45 application on the Port 7 WWTP outfall. That the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes are paid up to date regarding the subject lands. And that item 5, that this decision applies to the proposed development of the subject land shown on attachments 1 to 5 of the Development Services Report regarding A 23-45 application, only when a building permit is granted within 3 years from the date of decision. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried. The application is approved. Our next application is A 23-46 for 2 Island 1670. You guys. And now we're going to have minor variance application A 23-48 for 2 Island 1670. To the planner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just shared my screen, and as you stated, the next item on the agenda is minor variance file A 2348. The subject property is noted on the screen there, and it is on an island within Georgian Bay. A minor variance application was received by the township on September 29th, 2023, following consultation with municipal staff regarding the proposed development of the property. A detailed review of the application before the committee, and it has been noted that the majority of the subject island is identified as being within an area of natural and scientific interest, or as we call it, an ANSI, as shown on Schedule C1 of the district official plan. Due to the sensitive nature of the island, staff are recommending a scoped environmental impact study be completed as a condition of approval and to be completed prior to the issuance of building permits. The minor variance before you this morning, or is it the afternoon now, is in no way giving the permission for building until such time as that environmental impact study is completed. The owners of the property are proposing a master bedroom addition, covered entrance, and a new covered terrace addition to the existing dwelling. The existing dwelling was constructed in 1983, which would have been under bylaw 720053, and therefore the dwelling cannot be recognized as legal non-complying because it did not meet the setbacks in the 1972 bylaw. The proposed development will increase the GFA of the existing dwelling by 114.27 square meters, and variances are required for the minimum high watermark setback to the proposed covered entrance and master bedroom addition. This section 7.3 of the zoning bylaw that we will be varying, as the property is currently zoned shoreline residential island type 2. As you know, the 4 tests have to be considered when approving a minor variance. The property is actually designated as waterfront area in the Muskoka official plan and designated as waterfront in the township's official plan. And planning staff are of the opinion that the proposed minor variance requests do conform to the applicable policies of the district and township official plans, of course, based on the outcome of the environmental impact study. As you can see on the mapping noted on the screen, the island itself is almost 3/4, if not, it is 3/4 within that ANSI identified area. And where the policies of the district official plan do require that an environmental impact study be prepared. And such, the EIL shall be prepared in accordance with the requirements of the sections in the district official plan and the municipal official plan, mapping the natural heritage features and areas. As the majority of the property has been recognized as being part of an identified ANSI, as stated previously, staff are recommending a scoped environmental impact study as a condition of approval. And of course, you have to maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. The zoning bylaw does permit detached dwellings and accessory structures. As variances are being requested to further reduce the minimum front yard setback, or as we know, the high water mark, to provide relief of the bylaw requirements, staff feel that the general intent of the zoning bylaw is met, and they feel that the minor variance requests maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. And to be desirable for the appropriate development or use of the land, the property is an island property in Georgian Bay. It's an island comprised of approximately 1.01 hectares and currently has a detached dwelling, a detached garage, and a sleeping cabin. The closest neighboring island property is approximately 100 meters to the north and is a much smaller seasonal residential island at 0.40 hectares. The proposed additions to the existing dwelling will not alter the aesthetics of the existing property. Minor in nature, this test refers to the overall development proposal, and if it's considered minor in nature, this test is not merely to be a numerical determination, and minor can be evaluated through the determination of whether the proposed development would have a minor impact on the environment, the enjoyment and use of neighboring properties, or impacts on the functioning of government or other utility and essential services. In the photo, you can see that the existing cottage is fairly covered on the trees, and it does sit on a large portion of the granite area of the island. So based on the information that has been submitted in a review of the provincial policy statement and both official plans and the township zoning bylaw, it is staff's opinion that the proposed minor variance application is consistent and in conformity with the relevant policies and provisions, and of course, subject to the recommended conditions of approval.
No written correspondence was received.
Is there anything that you wish to add to the comments of the planner? And could I ask you to begin by giving us your name and address?
My name is Philip Lemedlen. I'm the designer on the project. I'm here on behalf of the client. I'm located in Barrie. I don't know if that matters.
Could I ask you to spell your name, sir? I didn't quite get it.
Philip, my first name, last name, Lamadeleine.
Okay, thank you again.
I'm glad that we are receiving support from the municipality in the most part. The only comment I might have is regarding the EIS itself requirement. For example, the two items that are considered for minor variance, one is just adding a flat roof section above an existing deck area to the front entrance, as there's no protection right now other than the indent, and it's meant to give a little bit more shelter. It is the current entryway. I do have some photos of the existing, if I can share my screen. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see it.
So this is the area in question where we have done the additional flat roof area. There's currently an enclosed deck here, which just gives access to crawl space underneath. It is existing, and the decking above, as you can see with just the railing and the wear on the railing itself, if I can zoom in here, that this is not new structures. We just simply want to go directly above this area. And as for the rear area, this area itself is where we're proposing to expand the porch. This item is not part of the minor variance. And at the rear, where we're proposing the addition of the master bedroom, other than this singular tree, which has close to a 4-inch diameter, there is no removal of any vegetation whatsoever, and which is why we selected this portion of the site, the addition on. So from our perspective, it's mostly that the EIS, if it's meant to be applied to the entire site, then that's one question. But if it's meant to be applied to where we are adding these two structures, there is no effect to the original site. We're not planning on digging because it's bedrock. We have planned our elevations to stay above the natural bedrock. We're strictly going to use piers that will be supported on the bedrock to limit the effect on everything. And we're just trying to see how necessary this scoped EIS has to be. It's quite a time-consuming situation considering we're only water access, and we're causing very little impact. Now, I don't know what the position might be from the municipality at this point, but if I'm just to continue, this is the deck area that I was mentioning before. And that's all I have to say, really.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak to this application? Seeing none, I will close the public session, bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. And we'll begin with member Predko.
Just to expand upon the question from the agent, the EIS would cover the entire property, I believe. I don't think it would be just the areas covered.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it would be basically up to a discussion between myself as the planner and the file, as well as the ecologist that would be doing it. I'm very hesitant to say that it not be required, and that's due to the fact that it has been identified by the district and MNR that it's an area of natural and scientific interest. There could be species at risk, and if anything happened and they found something during construction, it wouldn't be a good scene for the owner. So scoped wise, I think it would be to determine once the desktop exercise is done with the ecologist, and we can go through a terms of reference to see what they feel would be potentially on that property. That's when we could determine how scoped it would be.
Okay, and then just to confirm, from the diagram, the setbacks are, the property was already illegal, non-conforming, and the new setbacks are not very different from what the current property is. Thank you.
Member Jarvis.
Yeah, I noted in the report for the Honey Harbor waterfront community policies, just a quick quote: the objectives of the community of Honey Harbor includes preservation, enhancement of the character of the community, protect the integrity of the natural heritage and landscape of Honey Harbor, and to accommodate shoreline development, which is compatible, yada, yada, yada. And this is just extending on to the EIS scoping, and I am kind of hoping that the scope is more inclusive of the entire property. Having been to the site, there's significant alteration, not shoreline, but on the land itself, and fully scoped EIS, I think would be appropriate in this situation. Having said that, the variance is being requested, provided we get that scoped environmental, would be fine by me.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? Okay.
Can I add something?
Sorry, there's the applicant has a further question, or?
Just a quick question, just to see if, is there a possibility that pending this condition that we can submit for permit basically at the same time? to avoid delays in potential construction just due to the time of year and potential difficulty of access. If we could go through the process of still creating our submissions for permit and perhaps having them coinciding so that we don't lose too much time for construction.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I mean, that's all totally up to the applicant. I mean, we can't not take in a building permit, but I can basically ensure that you're looking at least 6 months or more to get an EIS done. So, and I mean, they're not going to go out in the winter months to do it.
We understand.
Okay, thank you. With no further questions, I will read the resolution. Moved by member Fredco, seconded by member Schmidt. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves minor variance application A23-48 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended for 2 Island 1670 to facilitate the construction of a covered entrance and master bedroom addition. The above noted approvals are subject to the following conditions. 1, that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. Item 2, that this decision applies only to the proposed addition and covered porch as indicated in Schedule A attached to and forming part of this decision. Any other variances that may appear on the schedules that are not listed in the written decision are not authorized. Number 3, that the owner prepare and submit prior to the issuance of a building permit an erosion and sediment control plan to the sole satisfaction and approval of the township, and that said approved plan be installed and maintained throughout the duration of any construction on the property. Item 4, that the owner prepare and submit to the satisfaction of the township and district of Muskoka a scoped environmental impact study to address the area of natural and scientific interest that encompasses approximately 3/4 of the island, and more specifically, the area on the rear and east side of the dwelling where the proposed additions are to be constructed prior to the issuance of building permits. Number 5, that in accordance with section 45, subsection 9.1 of the Planning Act RSO 1990, as amended, the owner shall enter into 1 or more agreements with the township implementing the recommendations of the environmental impact study if deemed necessary by the township. And item 6, that in accordance with section 45, subsection 9.2 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 as amended, upon final approval by the township, the agreements noted in condition 6 shall be registered at the owner's expense against the title of the land subject to this approval, and that the township shall be entitled to enforce said agreements against the owner and subject to the Registry Act and the Land Titles Act against any and all subsequent orders of the land if deemed necessary by the township. And item 7, that this decision expires 3 years from the date of decision if building permits have not been issued for the development. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. The motion is carried and the application is approved.
Thank you.
Our next and final application today is application A23-49 for 379 Rocky Shore Road. To the planner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This one's a fairly straightforward application. It actually came about as during the building permit stage. So the applicant does have their building permit at this time. And it was noted that upon review of the permit application that the construction had started at a 2-meter setback from the side lot line instead of 5. However, that is not the applicant's error. It was somehow that was given to them as a number that's what they could build at. So therefore, the applicant is coming before you this morning to ask for relief for this, and staff are in total support as it was a clerical error by giving out misinformation.
Okay. Has there been any correspondence in this application?
1 letter of support was received from Rob Allies, and 1 letter of no objection was received from Ron Breckville.
Okay. Is the applicant present? Do they wish to address the committee? If so, please come forward, turn on the mic, and give us your name and address.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Given you've been going since 10 o'clock, I'm going to be very, very brief. The application, as Ms. McCabe has indicated, is relatively simple.
I'm sorry, could I get your name?
Oh, sorry, it's John MacIntyre, MacIntyre. The subject address is 379 Rocky Shore Road.
Thank you.
So this is a simple application. It meets the 4 tests. I have support. I also have a letter of support from my immediate neighbor, which was included with the application. So the only reason that I can't comply is there is a rock face immediately adjacent to the site that, to accommodate the building area, would require either blasting or a substantial amount of fill being brought in. Neither one of them are desirable. So I have no other comments. Happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. MacIntyre.
Through you, Mr. Chair, could I just add one more thing? There was information has come forward. I know in my report I recommended that an erosion and sediment control plan be prepared. Mr. MacIntyre did provide me with photos as well as information on that's already in place.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true. Do we have any member of the public? Okay, well, we'll close the public session of the application and bring the matter before the committee for any questions or concerns. And seeing none, I will read the resolution. Did you have a question about Steve?
Wonder because he lost his voice.
He's
There's always a first. Laryngitis.
Sorry, I have a question. No, I'm just.
Moved by member Matthews, seconded by member Rivet. Be it resolved that Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves minor variance application A23-49 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended for 379 Rocky Shore Road to facilitate the construction of a dryland boathouse with a minimum interior side yard of 2 meters. The above noted approval is subject to the following conditions. Item 1, that the owner provides a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. Item 2, that this decision applies only to the proposed dryland boathouse as indicated on Schedule A attached to and forming part of this decision. Any other variances that may appear in the schedule that are not listed in the written decision are not authorized. Item 3, that the owner prepare and submit prior to the issuance of a building permit an erosion and sediment control plan to the sole satisfaction and approval of the township, and that said approved plan be installed and maintained throughout the duration of any construction on the property. And item 4, that this decision expires 3 years from the date of decision if building permits have not been issued for the development. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried and the resolution is, and the application is approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you for waiting so long to, I think there's an award. Okay, our next. Oh.
Deb, do you want to do an introduction?
But do we have to do that during the?
We have a new member of the planning team, and I'd like to introduce Andrew Donaldson. He's a new planner too with the township, and I don't know if Andrew wants to introduce himself a little more.
Well, we'd like a full background. Actually, if you don't mind, I'm just going to take a minute and adjourn the meeting, then we can get rid of the online part. And where there's no questions, it is moved by member Jarvis and seconded by member Schmidt. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment does now adjourn at 1:05 PM until December 17 at 2023 at 10 AM or at the call of the chair. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Okay, the motion is carried and the